hope you're doing well. I know it's been a little while since I last did a talking video like this, but I wanted to do an updated John Frusciante tone, board, like amp setup kind of video, because since my last video, a lot of things have changed. I think my last video, I had a lot smaller of a board than I do now. I have quite a few more guitars as well that are more like Frusciante-esque kind of style, as well as the amp setup that you can kind of see behind me. So basically, ever since I started playing guitar, I've always wanted a setup that's been kind of like this, and the days finally came. It's been a lot of work and money going into this, and time as well, you know, looking at settings online and whatnot. So I thought I'd bring a video to you guys as well as the audience I have on Instagram, because I post a lot more of like short form content over there, and a lot of people ask how I get my tone, and things are not the same as they used to be as like old videos on YouTube that I tell people to go check out. So I just wanted to do an updated one. So basically, the rundown for today, I now have the stereo Jubilee SV20 style like studio amps from Marshall, as well as a whole new board that I'll show up on the screen. So for those of you who don't know, I'm in a Chili Pepper tribute band, and since joining them, I've had to refine my sound based off of like updated equipment that I've been buying throughout the last couple months, because I think it's only been a year, yeah, about a year since I've been in the band. And depending on the venue, it can be challenging, because most of the time I'm able to use like the head and cab setup, but for smaller venues, I've used the Boss Katana, and when I first joined the band, I was using the Marshall AVT 150H, which you've seen in old videos. But yeah, so I have to kind of switch up my approach depending on what amp and what setup I have and where I'm playing. So now this is like my ideal ultimate bedroom setup based off of like, can you play these amps indoors? Because obviously you can't have a 200 watt major and a 100 watt Silver Jubilee like full out, because I can't even crank these sometimes without attenuator. So this is just more of an ultimate bedroom rig if you're really looking to go full out on John's tone. And yeah, basically I just want to cover the amp settings, the amp, how I'm micing it, what mics, pedal board, chain, signal. So I'm going to start with the amps and the amp settings, and then we're going to go into the pedal board, and then I'm going to touch on the guitars before we do the playing. And then if there's any questions, obviously you can drop them in the comments below. But yeah, let's go into the amp settings, and I'll show you guys how I have those set up. Okay, so if you watch a lot of my old videos, you'll see that I only had the one amp for a little while. I ended up purchasing the SV20H with the matching 2x12 cab because I got it for a crazy deal. It was listed on Facebook Marketplace for mint condition at like $1,500 Canadian with the cab and the head. Like, it was just a crazy deal. So I ended up snagging that. So now I have that with the Jubilee Studio head with both the matching 2x12s in the vertical version. The only difference with my Silver Jubilee is that I'm not running it attenuated, because it has somewhat of a master volume on it, which I'll get into in a second. But the SV20 here, I am running with the attenuator. I have the Bugera PS1 Power Soak, which I'll put on the screen here. It was a relatively cheap attenuator. I think it was about $110 after tax Canadian, and it does the job perfectly. The difference is that for this rig, I'm trying to do it as like a bedroom rig. So how quiet you can keep the amps and still achieve John's tone, because most people don't want to shake things off their walls, obviously, and bother neighbors. So this is the ultimate setup that you can get, I think, closest to his sound without having, you know, a full 4x12 cab. So quick note, when I was running the SV20 without the Jubilee, I had the channels jumped as it is on the screen, because I needed to get a little bit more crunch, because basically John's Jubilees was a tad crunchier than his major. So the SV20 acting as the major, if you're trying to do it in stereo, you'll find that if you run these jumped and then this one in the like stereo as well, the tone will sound too crunchy, to me at least. I'm basically going into the clean first channel, like the low impedance channel, and I have that pointing at literally just above 2, like right where it's going to break up, like right before that, because John's major, which is what this is emulating, was a lot cleaner and bassier than his Jubilee. This is more of the high end, like crunchy, to my knowledge at least, which I'll show you in the playthrough after. Like I'll A/B like what my Jubilee sounds like and what the SV20 sounds like. Because I have an attenuator on the SV20, I'm running it in the high mode so that there's a bit more headroom, so it doesn't crunch as easily, so I'm able to get a little bit more push. The Bugera Power Soak cuts the amp's volume instantly in half as soon as it's plugged in the chain of the head to the cab, and then I have the volume at about 30 on the Power Soak. For the Jubilee, I'm running it in low impedance, like the 5-watt mode instead of the 20-watt mode, because it crunches quicker, because there's less headroom. And that means you're able to turn up the output master a bit more with the crunch at where I have it at, which I'll talk to you about in a second. And so basically the input gain is at just over 8. So it's just getting to a little bit of crunch, and then the output master is at just about 2. So in the low impedance, you're able to match the volumes quite easily. As soon as I put this in the 20-watt mode, it jumps a little bit in decibels. So it gets a bit uneven unless I turn this up, and then things start to get really loud in my room. Obviously, when I'm playing live, I don't use attenuators. So we'll go left to right here. So presence at 5, bass at 10, middles at 7, trebles just under 1, And then my output master, like I said, is 2. Lead master's off because we're not using that channel. And then input gain is about 8. And then I have it in the playthrough pan right to the Jubilee. So that's like the wet signal, the one with reverb, because we'll talk about that after. And then for the SV20, so like I said, 20 watt mode, so the high mode. Presence is about 6, bass is at 10, middle's at 7, treble's at 4. And then the high treble loudness is off because I'm not using that channel. And so now the normal channel is at just above 2. So the amps are running so quiet that you can hear my picking acoustically from the mic. So that's how low the sound is coming out of the cabin to the 57, that it's not overpowering my picking in the room. You can still hear my picking slightly, especially on the major on the left speaker. So I'm using a 57 to mic the Jubilee, and then I'm using a 58 to mic the major because, like, with the cap off, the singing filter, because I don't have another 57. But you just EQ it slightly in post. It sounds almost the exact same because they're almost the exact same mic. And basically, as a disclaimer, like, this isn't going to be exactly like John's tone. Things are going to be off. This is just my approximation, what I think is great for my band and for recording, and just getting as close as you kind of can, because it's impossible to get exactly like John unless you're him with his gear and just you have his fingers and whatnot. So, but yeah, with that being said, that's the amp setup. We're just gonna go over to the pedal board chain and the pedals and why I chose them, and basically show you how I built the board if you're interested in doing something very similar, what I'm using, cables, power supply, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so before I hop over to the actual pedals on my pedal board, I just want to talk about the actual board that I'm using. So STRITCH Audio was kind enough to send this out to me. It was one of their largest pedal board builds, so I could fit as many pedals as I wanted on the actual board without worrying that I was going to run out of space, because I knew that there were so many pedals that I needed to fit. It's super durable. Out of all the builds that I've done since I started playing guitar and building pedal boards, this is probably the most high quality pedal board that I've actually built on. Like, the metal's super sturdy. I'm not gonna worry that it's gonna break when I step on my wah pedal or anything like that. It also came with a bunch of Velcro that I could put on the back, like fresh Velcro that I could put on the back of my pedals and on the board, and I still have so much extra because they give you so much. They have a bunch of different sizes, so you can definitely go on their storefront and check out the link in the description and see what size suits your pedal board needs. And yeah, so shout out to STRITCH for sending that over to me. It's much appreciated. So I'll put a picture of my old board and then what it looks like now so that you can see the differences and what I did to upgrade it, and what I thought was necessary. I'm just gonna go through each pedal, and it's in the exact signal chain that it looks. So it goes from right to left, and then it goes from right to left again. So it doesn't go like this or anything like that. It goes literally from right here. So my guitar into there, through all these pedals, and there's a wire that runs under the board into the Barbonera, and then all the way out to into the amps. So what I did here is I used to have the Polytune, but now I go wireless. So this is my wireless unit from NewX, which is probably the best wireless unit that I've used that doesn't need like a different type of receiver that doesn't fit on a board, because I do go wireless when we play large venues, but you can still go cable in this. That's not too important. It's a true bypass, so it doesn't affect the tone at all. Boss DS2, these are my settings, because I know that there's some people who run the settings full out, and then there's some people who dial it back. So from here, we're going into the Super Overdrive, which is what he uses on the UL Tour. These are the settings that I found best for me, like work best for me. The drive is, it's kind of similar to his, but I have the tone just a bit higher because I find that his is just a bit muddy for me, but it could be that my pickups are darker and his are brighter. Like, there's so many factors. But so this pedal unfortunately isn't working for me right now. Something happened to it. I'm not exactly sure how or why. It's like the JF Fuzz of Californication, so I'm pretty sure it goes more of like his Californication style fuzz. Unfortunately, I'm unable to demo it today, but this is a pedal that I really liked using for while I had it. But I'm looking to replace it for the Super Variac fuzz, which is what he uses by MXR in the new era. Next is the Big Muff Pi copy by JFX. So this basically just does John's Big Muff. It's just in a smaller enclosure. So the sustain looks like that. Tone is like that. So sustain's at like about 8.5 to almost 9. Tone is a bit more dialed back, probably about like 7. And then this main one here, like the volume is at 8 as well, just past 8. The micro amp is what's next in the chain. So this I didn't have for years. I honestly didn't have it for a very long time until I realized that I was using the SD1 as both like John's SD1 and then also for a micro amp. So for when I wanted to use it as a micro amp, I put the level all the way up and the drive all the way back, right? Because now it's just giving a little bit of boost, but it doesn't do the exact thing. I find that it was fine to use. It was just getting like annoying having to bend down and fix the settings every time I wanted to change it. So just put it back to where it was approximately. Next is my wah. I have the WH10 V3. It's not modded or anything. I have the switch on buffered because it's important to have it buffered so that all these distortions have some sort of buffer that's going through the wah. Helps with volume jumps and stuff like that. So I have the switch facing south of the pedal. which is on the buffer mode. My depth is at 10 because I really like it to be expressive. And then obviously it's on guitar mode. And yeah, this is probably like the most accessible option. I got it at Long & McQuaid. I like how it's in a metal enclosure versus a lot of the older ones in the plastic enclosure, because as you can tell, it's beaten up. It's got so many scratches and stuff on it, but it still works perfectly fine for me. Next is the Dynacomp. So the output I have just at like in between 5 and 6, sensitivities between like 6 and 7. That can fluctuate based off of your setup, but I find this is really important for things on Blood Sugar Sex Magik because it emulates a lot of the compression that they were using. Then we're moving over to the Barbonera. This is a very important pedal on my board as well as John's board too. Triangular Labs copy of his Moog pedals. It's called the Barbonera. My level knob, which is the preamp basically, if you don't want it, you can turn it all the way off like this. But I'm so like hesitant of changing the setting on this because it's so perfect right where I have it. But facing up is where I have it. It depends on your rig and how crunchy you want it. It basically acts as like the CE1 control, the level control. So it adds a bit of crunch to your signal and whatnot. And then all the other effects on here are basically like the wobbly Danny California thing or the throw away your television sounds. This is super crucial if you're looking to have both the CE1 preamp and the Moog preamp, as well as all the like the wobbly effects that John's doing. So then we're going out of here into the Line 6 M5, which has so many different effects. I'll just go through. It does all like delay, modulation, distortion, filters, and reverbs. I'll tell you what I use it for. So my first preset is John's tremolo, then the Digitech whammy for like when we do the Coachella intro, like from 2007. Then there's just some extra reverb if I want to stack like 2 different types of reverbs. It's like a Fender 63 reverb. Then there's long delay for things like Don't Forget Me. His Phase 90, reverse delay, because he does do that a little bit, but not so much live. This is just fun to play around with a bit. Then we have Flanger, throwaway solo. So it basically does like kind of what this does, but instead of changing the settings, I have a preset for it. C1 chorus, C1 vibrato, and there's so many other different like things that you could do. But like, let's just leave it on chorus for now. This also has a stereo output. So if you wanted to go stereo with the chorus, you can do that as well. But we're going mono into the modulation pedal. So this has his Phase 90. It's just basically for presets. Like you don't need both of these. But this is just for me to have like the Obi-Wah ready while I have the phase for like throwaway or television. So it's just different things based off of like your own setup and needs, but you definitely don't need both. This is the modulation by binary hot tone. And then this one is the replica of the Line 6 delay, like the DL4. It's got like the short delay for, I use it for Soul to Squeeze. It's got a long delay for Don't Forget Me, and it's got like the delay for throwaway or television, etc. Then we're going into a looper, which is not necessary, but John's DL4 has a looper built into it. So for things like when I play around with Dozed or Venice Queen and stuff, this is really nice to have. It's also just cool to have for your own stuff and ideas and whatnot. Then we're going into the C1. So we're almost done. Right now I'm having a problem with the C1. I've been talking to Jordan at JFX. He's a great guy. He was kind enough to send this over to me. So he got back to me and we're trying to solve the issue with the power supply because there's some sort of power thing happening with the chorus and vibrato. So when I turn it on, only the mono signal comes out of it. It's really weird. So right now I'm not able to split the chorus and vibrato stereo. So I just have it on the board for the level control, like the preamp buffer, so that I can get a little bit of that crunch that John does. And right now I find that having the level straight up like he did back then is a little too crunchy for me. And then having it where he does for the UL is too clean. So I have it at about like in between 4 and 5, but closer to 5. Then we're splitting the signal and I'm going mono into the SV20. And then I'm going stereo into the Hall of Fame reverb on spring setting. Decay is at 5, tone is at 6, and then the level is just before 5, but like you can alter that based off of how much reverb you want. That's basically pretty much my board. Let's talk about power supply and board in a second. And for those of you who are like maybe just getting into John's tone now, like it's very important that you have your distortions before your wah, so that when you play things like the Danny California solo, things don't sound more like Jimi Hendrix's wah sound. It's more of like the erratic kind of wah and distortion sound that John is very known for, as well as having the J effect, or as well as having some sort of C1 clone or C1 at the end of your chain, so you're able to go stereo 1 amp dry, 1 amp with reverb, because that's how John's amp's set up. It's got the Jubilee has the wet signal, the reverb, and his major is which is what the SV20 is today, is dry. So that's pretty much how I have the board set up. There's no tone suck or anything like that, as you'll hear in the demonstration. And then so I'm gonna touch on the power supply and the board that I'm using in case you're interested, and then we'll touch on guitars and then go into sounds. Okay, so actually powering all those pedals was kind of a challenge because I don't really know any brands that come with like smaller size pedal power supplies that don't take up like half of your board. As well as like they don't fit under the board as well. So Donner was kind enough to send out 2 of their power supplies to me, and they have loads of inputs, so I wasn't worried about powering all my pedals on my board. They're super lightweight and they have a cool LED that shines under the board if that's where you attach them. That looks really cool on stage. The key feature for me here was that they're very lightweight, and I had issues with my previous pedal board power supply because it was so heavy that the Velcro wasn't even holding it, and in the middle of shows it would actually fall off the bottom of my board and stuff would get unplugged. It was just a disaster. Anyway, so these power supplies are super lightweight, so I'm not gonna have to worry about that, as well as some of the things that came in the box with them. It came with all of the input jacks, so I don't have to worry about buying separate power like 9-volt inputs that go into the pedals that power from the power supply. Anything that I've used Donner has always been great and high quality, so I highly recommend those power supplies. So in regards to the guitars that I'm using for this entire like ultimate John Frusciante bedroom setup, everybody knows that John's, you know, notorious for using Stratocaster, so I just want to touch on the ones that I'm using as well as some of the other guitars. The main one is the John Frusciante 62 replica by Gundust Guitars. This is probably like the workhorse for me in my band because it's John's most iconic Strat, and you can get majority of his like single coil Strat tones out of it. It also looks like John's Strat exactly from the 2006 era, so it's 100% the #1 choice for me here. The next one, I have a 55 Strat inspired guitar by Guitars. They were kind enough to send this over to me as well to kind of mimic the vibe of John's 54-55 Strat. Nobody knows what year it's from. Then the red one behind me is my Highway 1 2004 Crimson Red Stratocaster. It was the first Strat that I ever bought. These are a little different sounding pickups, and basically what I do for that one is just to mimic his Fiesta Red. I got this way before I even kind of really got into John's playing, but it just happened to be that it's very similar to Fiesta Red, and I kind of don't do what John does with it because he leaves that in E flat on the Unlimited Love tour for things like Black Summer, but I leave it in standard and then I'll just play Black Summer a half step down on the fretboard. But I just like it because it's my favorite guitar of John's. I always loved red Strats, so that's kind of where I'm going with that. So the next one's a Fender American Vintage Reissue 61 Strat in Olympic White. This guitar I use for things like Charlie and Eddie and whatnot because I set the pickups a bit higher so that they're a bit more crunchy, and you can hear it in the sound demo because John has certain guitars that sound a bit crunchier, or the EQ is a bit different obviously because all the pickups are different in his guitars. So this one I have for more of like a Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan when I'm not playing John stuff because it's a bit more crunchy since the pickups are set higher, so that's kind of the vibe that I'm going with that one. And then I used to have a Squire Classic Vibe 60s Telecaster that looked like his 60s custom, but I got rid of that one just because I was just having issues playing that guitar for some reason. I just wasn't jiving, but I do have another Tele coming on the way to do like his Can't Stop kind of stuff for Around the World, the more high output bridge pickup kind of tone. And then the last one that I have is the Gretsch White Falcon. This is a Synchromatic series from Gretsch. It's their most recent release for the White Falcon. And yeah, so that's all my guitars. Like I said, you mainly just need a Stratocaster to get his tone because he does use like what he'll play on the Falcon, like Californication and whatnot, he's also done on his Strat because I guess he just wanted that vibe, especially in the later years like 2006, 2007. So it's definitely not a necessity to have all these different style guitars. It's just kind of when you get down the rabbit hole, you want to have different style guitars, but the main, you know, 62 Strat is kind of what you're trying to emulate here with the Strats. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. I think I got relatively close to John's tone, or closer than previous videos that I've done, just because I think it was just easier to get a bit closer to his tone, as well as like the stereo setup and everything. And running one amp a little bit more bassy, less trebly and cleaner, and then having the other amp a little bit more crunchy and a little bit more trebly, I think both of those together is what really creates John's sound, as everybody knows. But with that being said, let me know what other videos you want to see in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed the playthrough, and I just hope that it helped you get closer to what you're trying to achieve. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.